Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. And before I get started, I want to say Happy Halloween. I mean, granted, at the time we recorded this, wait. Yep, it's still technically Sunday night. It's literally like 10 minutes before midnight, but it's still Sunday night. So, but by the time you hear this, it will be Halloween. This will probably most likely be. I could have said it in the other ones too, but because this is actually I'm recording this last. But, you know, this will be the first one to go up because I usually put Not Too Comic Books up first anyway. So, nevertheless, happy Halloween. That's the whole point. For this episode, Not Too Comic Book is a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. I'm completely screwing up the intro. I apologize because I wanted to add it in. I'm completely screwing up the intro. Nevertheless, for today's episode, we're going to talk about the latest episode of The Walking Dead. So, you know, just because I picked it up from Chris Hardwick, which, you know, it is true, a very light episode this week. Thank you. Thank you so much, because after last week's episode, I need something light. Which, there's some things I want to talk about last week's episode, but I'll kind of save that further to the end. I'll talk about all the stuff I want to talk about for this episode, and stuff about that, you know, it's connected to, obviously, what went down last episode, as well as kind of like, you know, some stuff I found out about the comic books, but I'll get to that later on, so. But, yeah, like I said, very light episode. We end up kind of picking up where Morgan and Carol got left off last season. I kind of wasn't expecting. I was expecting us to kind of go back to the group in Alexandria and then return and kind of broken and defeated. More so than anything, broken. But we see Carol and Morgan, and they get brought. The people that help them are from a place known as the Kingdom, ruled by a guy named King Ezekiel, which I love his side guy. What's his name? Jerry. Just because he's a weirdo, just kind of making all these punches like, oh yeah, it'll be well, haha. And you kind of see Ezekiel go like, oh god, just shut up, Jerry. He's like, oh yeah, I'll be over here. He's like, oh, enjoy. Jerry's just kind of he seems like a fun-loving dude. There are moments in the episode you kind of see a serious look on his face, but he seems like kind of a fun-loving dude. And Ezekiel is a very interesting character. He's kind of ruling as a king. He has a pet freaking tiger named Shiva. How freaking awesome is that, dude? That is amazing. I was like, dude. Because even Morgan was like, oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, he has a tiger as a pet. It's like, you know, and Carol does her normal thing. Kind of her defense mechanism is to kind of play a part, kind of a weak-willed woman. And she's just kind of like in shock. And he's like, okay, like you have nothing to say. She's just like, oh no, like your majesty. Just like, oh, I'm in such awe and I'm awestruck and everything. It's like, oh yeah. Carol doing her normal thing. Like Carol kills that, dude. Like it doesn't happen a lot. Like, when it first got to Alexandria, well, a lot of times they spent in subsequently, since they got to Alexandria, she was like that. She played that part so well. There was that whole situation when those saviors had them. She was definitely playing it up then, but she's playing it up now, too. Which I'll get to that in a second, but even she was like, okay, this dude is out of his damn mind. This is all just a game. Like, these people, what is up with them? Like, kind of how they acted towards the Alexandrians the moment they first met them. It's just kind of like they have no idea what's going on out there. Like I said, it's a very interesting episode because you have like the main focus of it is, you know, specifically Morgan and Carol in a sense of obviously this new place and this new group of people that they're with. It sets up a lot of stuff for one. For one, these people are connected to the Saviors because they're another group that belongs to the Saviors, that belong to Negan. And that kind of shows you even more. It's like, this is the third group that we know of now. I mean, guys, obviously Alexandria now belongs to Negan too. But what's that other group place, Hilltop, that they originally had the deal? It's like, oh, you know, Rick's group was like, yo, we kill Negan for you. We get some of your supplies and everything. So, you know, this Kingdom group makes three. But it just shows you just how powerful and how large, you know, Negan's reach goes. And that's kind of it wasn't a big, I mean, obviously he played a part in the episode, but it's kind of to emphasize that, that shows you just how powerful he is. Like, we've seen the vast amount of men he has, just how much manpower he has, the vehicles, the arsenal he has, just how bloodthirsty he is and everything. It just shows you just how very dictator-like he is, just like how, you know, and these, like I said, these are three large groups he has underneath his, like, you know, has control of. And then I brought it up last episode, like, how did he manage this? Who was Negan before it all went to hell? Because, you know, kind of getting to it really quickly, you have, like, Ezekiel kind of admitting, like, he kind of, because he sees through Carol's like whole nice act and everything. He's like, you can't bullshit the bullshitter, because apparently he drops his accent, the way he's talking and everything, because actually he's been faking it his entire time, because originally he's actually a zookeeper. That's how him and Shiva came together, because basically everyone hyped it up. It's like, oh, he wrestled with the tiger, he got the tiger in control. It's like, no, the tiger got hurt, I helped it, and now it's basically stayed by my side subsequently. He's like, easily that tiger could rip itself away from me. I don't force it to stay, but it stays by my side. It, stays guard on me. But it's like, I have to emphasize that. Holy shit, you got a tiger on your side during the apocalypse, dude. You good. I know it's stupid, but man, that is good. But Ezekiel's like, yo, like, I just decided to play the part. I'm just a zookeeper. I mean, I had some, like, theater parts and stuff like that. I played some kings in the past, so, I just played the part because people need hope. People want someone to lead them, to kind of show them the way, to kind of give them, hope. And he wants, if he's like, if I have to play that part for people, if it helps keep people alive and everything, then I'll do it. He was even asking Carol, like, let's keep this a secret for everyone else's sake, and also kind of for my sake too. Because interestingly enough, he doesn't want to give up on Carol, because Carol's kind of conflicted with everything. Like, she spent so much time kind of cutting off that side of herself where she had to do what she needed to do to protect her family, and that meant killing a lot of people. But the whole situation with Morgan kind of opened up her eyes to it, because you even see it in a little bit in this episode where it's like, when you see them killing those walkers, which you had that first dude, when he sliced that walker, he sliced like part of his face off, so like its front face like fell off and it looked like a slab of meat. It was like, that was brutal as hell, dude. That was like, ugh. But every time she looked at the walkers, she saw the person that they originally were. So it's just kind of like a reminder, just kind of like her, like, in a sense, it's almost like she cut off her humanity all this time. Like, subsequently, since like season 3, she kind of cut off her humanity. More specifically than anything, I'd say probably around season 4 is really when she kicked up the fact is that she cut off her humanity. She's a very different woman very different from the woman you kind of met back in season 1 and season 2. Very different. But I guess that woman's still there. Like, those walls she built up to kind of be that person that she felt like she needed to be to protect her family, the people that she cares about, this, like everyone that back in Alexandria, part of the group and everything. To be that person, she had to build up those walls, and it seems like they're slowly crumbling down. She doesn't know what to do. And that kind of ties in with Morgan, too. Morgan doesn't know what the hell he's doing anymore, because he believed, the path that Eastman put him on was kind of the right path. And he's never felt like, hey, there's right and wrong. It's like he'd rather some people not kill, but he knows he can't force that upon others. And, he was training that boy Benjamin to kind of go down that route. And he was even like, Benjamin was like, oh, can I read that book? The book he got from Eastman. He's like, no, don't read it. And it's just like, cannibalism. And he let him read it, because Morgan doesn't want that book to influence his decisions, because he doesn't want to make people go down the path that he's going, because even he's not sure what he's doing is like even right for him. Like, there is like no, like, in the beginning he did feel like there was no right and wrong when it came to it, but now he's like, it kind of seems like he's questioning his path, because like this whole non-killing thing, it just leaves him conflicted, and it's like it leaves them open for future problems. It's like his way of doing things would lead to, consequences down the road. Like I said, the whole situation with that wolf from last season, the whole like Denise situation, like that could have played out a lot very differently. Yes, he had a change of heart and everything, but it's like things won't always work out that way. And so he was like, because when Benjamin started asking him questions like, oh, so it says not to kill, he's like, I'm trying to put you on the right path. Like, really, you're the one that kind of decides where to go from there. Like, I tried to show you, like, this is the path, but I can't show you the way. You have to find your own way, find out what everything means to you, because he doesn't want to influence his decision, because it's like, Morgan's like, I'm confused as hell. So a guy that's confused, help someone else kind of find their way. I'm still trying to find my way to trying to find the path that's right for me. So, I don't know, it kind of presented a very interesting thing. Like, Morgan's character has developed very differently than you thought. Like, I mean, I really appreciated last season getting that opportunity to learn, like, why Morgan became the way he did. Because when he popped up back in season 5, he was very different from the guy that you had met previously. So it was kind of interesting to kind of get a picture, like, well, kind of understanding why he got to where he was, what led to him becoming the way he was. I mean, because you've seen three different Morgans. You saw the first Morgan Rick met at the beginning of the series, then the second Morgan that after he had lost his son, kind of going a little crazy. Rick saw that side of him, and now you see this side of him. I mean, technically, this is probably like the fourth Morgan, because now he's like, I'm confused. This path has led me this way, but it's like, I don't know if I can continue down this path or not. So, like I say, more so than anything, it's like a very character development episode of just kind of like, where the hell do we go from here? Because you ended up finding out, I mean, obviously I brought it up earlier, the fact is that they have a deal with the Saviors. Now, an interesting thing Morgan brought up was like, hey, you brought me here because you knew the guy that I killed was a savior, and you brought me here because you want me to do the same thing. And he's like, actually, Morgan, I brought you here for the complete opposite. Because you ended up finding it out from Benjamin that basically they lost some people in the past, which included Benjamin's dad. That's why he cares so much about Benjamin, because it's like him and Benjamin's dad were good friends. And subsequently, since that loss, Ezekiel has been a lot more careful. And so when it comes, he made the deal with the Saviors, and it's off book. Like, a lot of people don't know. It's a very well kept secret. Only people that know are the people that were there with him, because if everyone knew about it, there might be people who might want to fight back, and he doesn't want that, because it means going up against the Saviors, and we've seen their numbers, how badly that can go. I mean, it literally backfired on Rick and his group, and now two of his people are dead. So, it could easily go bad because they have numbers, they have the weaponry. It's like, you can't, that's hard to go up against. And it's like, because Benjamin's like, Ezekiel's probably afraid that there are going to be a lot of people dead. It's kind of hard to say who's right and wrong in that situation, whether Ezekiel should tell the people or not, because it's like, there will be people who are like, no, we have to fight back. We can't keep offering stuff up to them, which we ended up finding out, because I was like sitting there the entire time. Even Morgan was asking a question, like, why are you feeding walkers to these pigs? And it's like, oh, that's part of what they're giving to the Saviors. Now, I don't know how to interpret that. Either that's their way of getting them bigger, because it's like, okay, we got to give a certain supply and demand to Negan. So it's kind of like, is that, is it for that regard, or is it because it's like, hey, we hope that we get to poison them in some way, and it's like, oh, they can't blame us because it's like, oh, something must have went wrong with the pigs. I don't think so. Like, it seems like, whether this is the first time they did that or not, I don't know, because I feel like Ezekiel's not trying to start stuff. Like, if some of their people end up getting sick or something, maybe they could, I guess, there's multiple ways to look at it. You could be like, okay, some of the people get sick, and it's like, okay, oh, someone happened to die, must be something they caught. Maybe they didn't cook the meat properly or something like that. Or maybe, it could be like, oh no, something was wrong with that meat. You did this to our people. We're coming for you. Ezekiel is not trying to start stuff with the Saviors. It's just going to be very interesting to see what happens when Rick's group crosses with this group. Because, like, ultimately, I brought it up last episode, only way to take down Negan is if literally everyone came together. And even then, it might not be enough. Like I said, like, Negan's got an army. Like, like I said, I brought it up, just by himself, he makes Governor look like a punk. But even Governor, I feel like, didn't have the artillery and the resources that Negan has acquired and rather amassed. So I'm just very curious as to what their deal. Like I said, I get more so than anything. My mind is split between the two on whether it's like, oh, you're trying to poison them, or was it just to fatten up the pigs so that you have enough to kind of pay them off. But part of me is thinking it's the latter rather than the former. So I mean, it could go either way. I'm leaning more towards the latter, but it totally could be the former, that they are trying to poison them. So I mean, we'll just have to kind of wait and see. But just that's, I like what they're trying to do with Carol's character. Like, he's kind of like, hey, it makes me feel good. I'm not gonna, like, because Carol just wants to go off and be on her own, but no one Morgan doesn't want that, and neither does Ezekiel. So it's kind of, she compromised. He's like, I live in the contradiction, and he's like, you could say I'm a little crazy. Maybe I am. Like I said, I like Ezekiel because he's kind of like a weird oddball character in this whole situation. He was kind of thrust in being in a situation of being kind of royalty in a sense, and he decided to play the part, and it's worked out subsequently since. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do with this character. I'm very curious if you've read the Walking Dead comic books, without going into too many spoilers. I mean, without, because I ended up catching some spoilers when I was looking up stuff from last episode. Like I said, I'm gonna get to that soon. But like, certain things I got spoiled on. About some stuff I was fine with, because it's like, okay, like for instance, I'll throw out 1, because it doesn't matter where the show is. Like, Andrea's still alive in the comic books. Apparently, the part of the role that Michonne plays in the show, she actually plays playing a little bit of Andrea's role, because apparently Andrea and Rick are a thing in the comic books. But obviously, she died back at the end of season 3. But, you know, Michonne is kind of Rick's girlfriend, so she's kind of, you know, it's one of those situations where characters kind of double up on someone else's role, like, you know, different adaptations and interpretations or something. So you see it with certain animes and TV show, like, you know, stuff. It's like you might look at like, oh, there's like 2 characters that play 2 separate roles, but rather than having both characters in something, maybe they only take one of those characters, and that one character might feel parts of the other character's roles as well as their own, you know? If that makes sense. It can be a little confusing the way I phrased it, but it seems like that might be what they're doing with Michonne's character. Or maybe that was just them being like, you know, well, Andrea's not here because we killed her off back in season 3. Let's let him and Michonne be the thing, because it's like they're obviously getting closer and everything. So it's like, hey, it's, you know, maybe the fans wanted it. I don't know. It just, to me, it caught me off guard. I never really saw that. I feel like out of anyone, he trusts Michonne the most, but that's beside the point. I'm not about to get to that. I mean, I guess it does make, it kind of plays into it, because it's like, hey, Ezekiel and Carol, maybe? Even though I thought there was totally a her and Daryl thing, but then she started dating that dude, was it Tobias? From Andrea. So, Alexandria. I know, I was bumbling my words. I was like, no, that's wrong. Why am I so stupid? But, Alexandria. So, you know, maybe something there. At the very least, he's there kind of helping her get through whatever it is that she's facing, you know, whatever decision she comes to, because, you know, the contradiction. You can go, but not go, you know, it's going to be ultimately her decision. And she decided to live out in that little house that's a little way from the kingdom. So she left without leaving, you know, so. Like I said, a very interesting episode. I did catch a little sneak peek of next week's episode, and it seems like we might be getting Daryl's side of the story, like what's happening between him and his saviors. You know, it seems like, you know, we're trying to, like, because this was a story element that was just kind of left off last season. It's like, okay, now we're getting to that too. It seems like the beginning of this season is kind of tying up loose ends, and it seems like next week's episode is kind of picking up, kind of, you know, kind of not really a loose end, just kind of the aftermaths of the first episode. This was kind of like, hey, this is aftermath of, like, well, this is something we left off in last season that we're kind of going ahead and getting dealt with now, because it's going to play a role in later on. Because, like I said, the whole kingdom being a part of, you know, it showed you just how big and powerful Negan's group is. The fact is they have this many, like, different groups of people under their belt, essentially. So it's going to be interesting to see where that progresses. But like I said, whether Daryl's story is going to be the entire episode, maybe. Like, you know, because side stories kind of play. I wonder, I'm very curious, does it work like that in a comic book or not? Once again, if you know, do let me know. Like, do side stories like this, like, where it's not even mainly on the group, like Rick and whatnot, like, are there chapters where it's kind of like, or issues or whatever, where it's like, yeah, this dealt with, like, didn't even deal with the main group, it dealt with, like, some other side story, for example. Like last season, like, an entire episode was devoted to, Morgan and his whole Eastman situation. So, and you know, really quickly, like I said, I brought it up earlier. So this is kind of the end of it. So if you don't really care about what I wanted to say about last week's episode, some extra stuff I've learned subsequently since then, just you can stop here. Like I said, this is just going to be extra stuff I'm adding on in here, just kind of talking about that, building upon it. So if you don't care about it, go ahead. You know, hope you enjoyed it, whatever, you know. But other stuff I wanted to talk about was kind of building, like, because I left a comment explaining this, because it was something I brought up, like, you know, how Glenn was like I left a comment saying, like, oh, it's actually, you know, after I recorded it, it wasn't until the next day I started thinking about it. I was like, actually, there were key signs that it was going to be Glenn. Apparently, there were some that it was going to be Abraham too. I kind of figured as much. I think I pointed it out in some regards of, like, okay, it could have been Abraham because of this and that. But apparently, there was other stuff and like, oh, he said this. Oh, Negan said this. So it's kind of like, okay, that was going to be Abraham. But, you know, Glenn, I pointed out because, like, when they attacked the Saviors originally, you know, that place with the whole big dish or whatever. Well, it was Glenn as well as that other dude that he was with, the one that left with Tara after they dealt with the whole Savior situation. Glenn was the one that found a picture, so I was like, oh, that's a load of foreshadowing. Now, something I interesting learned is apparently that's straight out of the comic books, Glenn dying by Negan's hands. Apparently Negan's a pretty big villain in the comic books as well, but that's actually the way Glenn died by Negan's hand, and well, Negan and Lucille's hands in the comic books as well. Apparently, like, his death was actually straight out of the comic books. Like, the whole, like, after the first hit, his eye bulging and stuff like that, his head kind of being caved in, apparently straight out of comic books. So it's just, like, very disturbing. Side note, I'd like to add this. That whole episode stuck with me for a couple days. Like, every time I was laying down to sleep, kept seeing that pop up in my head. It kept messing with me so much. I was like, I can't concentrate on nothing but that, just because it kept floating back to the front of my head. But nevertheless, also, side note thing I want to point out was Abraham. So, interestingly enough, Abraham obviously didn't die the same way in the comic books. He died in, like, an issue or like 2 or 3 issues before Glenn did. Apparently, Dwight shot him in the eye. Now, interestingly enough, when you look at the show, that's exactly how Denise died. He shot one of Daryl's arrows right into, like, Denise's right eye. That's exactly how Abraham dies in the comic book. So, I guess that was kind of foreshadowing to, like, oh yeah, Abraham was going to be one of the people too. So, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to add that in there. Like I said, I learned other things too that kind of got spoiled for me, but I won't mention them just in case, you know. It's one of those situations where I'm mentioning those things because it's like, you know, because it's like, well, if you read the comic book, it might kind of spoil certain things for you. But it's like when you get, like, you know, I feel like at this point, like, you're going to know there's differences between the comic book and the TV show, obviously. So it's like, you see that this character died here at this point. So in a comic book, when you're reading it, maybe you're thinking like, oh, it won't be up until this point. Like, as I kind of spoiled it. Like, the fact is Andrea's still alive in the comic books. Like, she's still alive and kicking and she's with Rick. So that could be a spoiler, I guess. But it's kind of like, you know, if you're watching a TV show, you already know she's dead. So, I mean, I guess it kind of covers up the fact that it's like, well, you know, maybe there's points in the series. There might even be a point right now where it's like, oh no, you know, I'm up to issue 102 and Andrea's she's in a situation that she's about to die. And it's like, oh, she didn't die. Now I know she isn't dead yet because, like, I'm not caught up with the latest issue because obviously the latest issue isn't 102. And you said that Andrea's still alive. So, you know, nitpicking like that. But just, those were just some extra things I wanted to kind of cover because I've subsequently, like I said, just, I don't know, like, it's just, I'm very interested to see, like, the differences, learn the differences between everything, so, like I said, still bummed out about the whole Glenn and Abraham things. It sucked. I don't know if I kind of feel like it probably would have been better for Abraham if he had just gotten an arrow through the eye. I saw the particular panel where that happened. Whether or not that's what actually killed him, because I saw that he was still talking in that panel, even with it through his eye, so maybe he was still alive and then maybe Negan kind of batted him or something, or maybe not, I don't know, but I just kind of looked at that, like, that was all I really looked up. It was, like, character statuses and whatnot, so, like I said, there were some spoilers I entered, so I'm very, because who knows, because it's like, certain things, it's like, oh, that could be a spoiler, or maybe not, because it's like, well, said spoilers could have happened, like, we're past that point in the TV show. It's like, oh, that happened earlier in the series, in the comic book, and maybe it doesn't happen at all. And, you know, it didn't happen at all in the TV show. Or maybe it's like, oh, I definitely spoiled some stuff for me. So it's character specific. It's like who lives and who dies type of thing. So there's like 2 characters, I won't say who, that I ended up finding out they're dead in the comic books. I'm like, well, shit. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I want to add on it in here. That's all. So just kind of wanted to get that out there in some shape or form. I was going to make a whole video about it, but I was just like, yeah, just kind of, I was like, I'll just wait and tack it on at the end of, you know, at some point during this recording, you know, so. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.